Hello and welcome to the first in a long series of tutorials about web design. I'll be using a hands-on approach showing you the technical process of building a website from the ground up while explaining the different reasons why one practice is used over another. Now, never before on Web Design Tuts has any tutorial brought you the best of both worlds. There are plenty of hands-on and web design theory tutorials, but none use both teaching methods at the same time. By using both methods, you can easily make sense of why different theories are accepted in the community over others because you're just able to visually put two and two together instead of trying to grab from your memory bank. So I hope all of that makes sense to you, and we can go ahead and get started. Now for the Photoshop version, this is what we're going to pretty much end up with, and as you can see, it's nothing that's terribly too complex. It's a fairly simple website. We have a header here, and then we have our banner or slider or featured content section, and then we have an actionable content section, and then we have some priority content here going from 1, 2, and 3. In order to put everything in one file, we have to make the page as long as the longest page on here. So like I said, it's nothing that's too complex, and so this is what we're going to end up with. Moving right along, I would like to first off start with the wireframe. Now, as you can see, I have laid out the building blocks of the entire website in order to get a better idea of what we're actually going to be building during the production phase. And as you can see, we are actually using Azure Pro. And I will show you here, you can go to www.azure.com, and actually it'll take you to their website, and you can go down and download a free trial if you're not familiar with it, and just go ahead and get familiar with it. So if we go through the wireframe, we can see that nearly every aspect of the website that we'll be building has been laid out, from the images to the placement of the text, as you can see here. It's important that you get these things at least close to the way you want them to appear in your final build, as it would save you an enormous amount of creative thinking time. So you know about writer's block, of course. Well, the same thing applies to creative block, where you just completely get stuck and end up wasting large amounts of time, and I've found myself doing this on a number of occasions. And usually you end up staring at your computer screen just trying to conjure up some sort of idea. This usually ends up in disaster, and a lot of people end up compromising instead of taking a break and regathering their thoughts, which is a mistake. This is one of the many benefits of a wireframe. It's one of the ways to defeat creative block. Now, what does this have to do with creating a wireframe, you might ask? Well, let's look at the wireframe as a blueprint used to build a house. Without that blueprint, it would take at least 3 times the amount of time it takes to build, and contractors would be lost, or so that's the theory. Now, it is entirely probable that a house or a website, in this case, can be built without the blueprint if you have enough knowledge and skill to pull it off. For beginners, though, I would not recommend this approach, but for seasoned veterans, I would say that building a website through Creative Flow is even better than having a blueprint. Now, the reason I say this is because when using wireframes, we tend to follow a certain order of guidelines accepted by professionals. But when you are seasoned enough to just let the creative juices flow, that's when we start to see some really amazing work put out on the World Wide Web. So what I say to you is that when you are just learning, by all means use a wireframe. And when you gain enough experience that using proven methods becomes automatic, that's when you can throw out the wireframes and really start creating masterpieces. Now that you have an idea of the pros and cons of wireframes and how they work, we're going to go through and see how to build one. And we're going to do that through high speed so that you don't have to go through a entire boring process of creating the entire wireframe, which could take, which could take 40 minutes to up to 2 hours to do. It's better for us to just go through it in high speed and maybe explain some of the key points to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. What I've started with here is a 980 wide background because that's essentially going to be the size of our website. So let's go ahead and get started on how to create this. First thing I'm going to do here is grab the image and put it up there as the logo, and I'm going to make sure that there's some padding on the left hand side and on the right hand side for the login, so that our content area is 960 pixels wide, which is going to be the width of our content area inside of the actual 980 pixel background, which is the full width of our website. And putting the login on the top right hand side is usually a good idea, and I'll explain why during the Photoshop part of this series, which will be in part 2. Now I'll just go ahead and add a horizontal menu. We're going to be making the pages home, about, contact, and blog. That'll be used throughout the entire series. Even this up a little bit and make sure there's a separator for between the header and the slider area. And now for the slider, I'm just going to grab a big rectangle, make it 960 pixels wide, put a big image on the left hand side, and then we will put some text on the right hand side where the focus content should always go on the home page. It's always good practice to make sure that you have some focus content so that your website is properly progressive. And we'll talk about progressiveness in websites later on. Right here we're going to put some actionable content where we want our users to start browsing our website first. And this area here, since people will see it first and foremost after the slider, it will give us an opportunity to direct our users to where we want them to go first. Put a separator there and even that out a little bit, and the next thing will be our priority content that we want read first on our website, such as products and services. And then we'll just put a little placeholder there, a little image, such as if you have a service of a tool or a product of a hammer that you think is really cool, you can just put the image of the hammer there, and then put a little bit of information about the hammer underneath the image so that users can click on that and you can direct them to that important piece of information. Nextly, we will put a Twitter feed. It's always a good idea to put some sort of dynamic content, and a Twitter feed is always very easy to implement, and people can stay up to date with what you are doing. Separator here for the footer, and in the footer we're going to put a list of links, which is a very common practice to put a list of important links in the footer, and it also acts as sort of a sitemap since it'll be on every page. Just kind of got to even these out a little bit. And that should be good. Pull the background down a little bit and get a line underneath the last link, and then copy and paste that 3 times. Now if you have a newsletter, putting the newsletter in the footer is a pretty good idea. Since you don't want it to block any of your main content, but you do want it to be there and be pretty easy to access. no matter what page your users are on. Here we'll make sure that they can subscribe and put a little box for the email, and then they can submit and subscribe to our newsletter. Here we're going to put some direction to our social pages, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We want to make sure that people are able to access us on our social sites. Social networking is very important. Looks pretty good. Alright, and then we will go ahead and move on to the first page. Delete that, keep our header and footer, and then put our title area, which is going to be the About Us page title. That needs to be fairly large. And then you can put a little bit of information about that page. Put a separator here, separate from the actual content, and then put our breadcrumbs. And we'll go through all that later, discussing the importance of breadcrumbs and the importance of titles and placement of titles. I need to grab some lorem ipsum here so I can go ahead and put some dummy text in, and then put an image on the left-hand side of the content. Make sure that there's some padding between the image and the text. Makes it easier to read. Typography is very important, and we will go through that during the Photoshop area. Okay, now that we have that, put a vertical separator, and this is going to be our sidebar, and right here we'll put a link to our testimonials page. We didn't actually build that. Bring that down because there's going to be more content. This is the right sidebar. And we will just put some links to our home, about, contact, and blog page, as well as a search input box. It always looks better when you try to have at least evens, or when you try to at least have a little bit of even spacing between the separator on both the content area and the sidebar. And in your files it is like that in the wireframe, and in this one it is not. We're going to go to page 2, and this is going to be our contact page. It's always a good idea to add some contact information so that your visitors can get a hold of you. Just be careful with putting in your emails. A lot of spam bots out there that like to get a hold of your emails, so make sure that they are encrypted. Go ahead and put a separator, and then we'll put the address here, which is going to be your street in New York, New York. Put in another separator so that we can add our departments. And our first department is going to be actually the sales department, and the contact person is actually going to be me, Justin Hubbard. This is my email. It is jhubbard@elineweb.com. If you have any questions, you can actually contact me through that email. I don't mind at all. This is not my actual phone number. This is the Hollywood phone number. And we'll add another department and same information, just so that we can get an idea of what it will look like on an actual website. This is going to be a Google map. If you have an office, this is a very easy way for your customers to find you. Put a separator there, and then we want to put a form so that our visitors to our website can send us a message. Fairly simple form, you know, name, email, message, and then we have a little captcha for 3 plus 5. And anybody who's human should be able to figure that out. Unless, of course, they are a kid, 4 years old, which they can probably figure it out too. But they probably shouldn't be on your website unless it's directed for that. Put a little submit button here. And this page looks pretty good too. And we'll move on to the third page, which is actually going to be our blog page. And on this page, I'll add the left sidebar. And as I said before, during the Photoshop part, in part 2, we will explain the differences between the left and sidebar and why one is better over the other. I will also explain why we put archives on the top and recent post on the bottom of the sidebar for our blog. I want to copy that to make sure we get the correct size. Put a separator there, and our image for our blog post is going to actually be a big top image instead of to the left of our content. We want to obviously add our post information. What date was it posted on, and by who, and with how many comments, and in what section of the website, or in what category, I should say. Just demonstrating how to add a link inside of your post. And then I need to go ahead and grab some lorem ipsum right here. I know some of you guys probably use balsamic mockups to do your wireframes. I use Exur. It's used mostly by larger companies and whatnot, and I prefer Exur, so I would recommend using it and getting familiar with it and using it for your wireframes. Balsamic mockups is a good tool, but it has a lot of missing functionality. Now, in any blog post, it's always a good idea to add social links so that the readers can share your post with other people and in turn get new visitors. We also want to credit our author. It's always a bad idea not to credit your author. And our author will be admin. Put in some lorem ipsum and take out a little bit of the information, make it a little bit smaller. That'll be good. And we want to separate it from our comments section. We have one comment, and the comment is going to be by admin. The caps lock on there, and you want to make sure that you know who it's by and on what date. Forgot to do that up here. Go ahead and take care of that now. Put it in the content box for the comment and then add some lorem ipsum. I'll try to make the Photoshop part 2 and the rest of the parts more entertaining. The wireframe, there's not a whole lot of entertainment to go along with the tutorial, but it's vital to understand wireframes and to get a visual inspection of how it's being built. I have run into many people who've tried to build wireframes and end up being stuck. Even though you're looking at it right now and it looks really simple, if you don't know anything about it or you've never built a wireframe before, you'd be surprised how easy it is to get stuck. So this looks pretty good here, and we have all of our pages and they all look pretty good. Yep, so that's the wireframe. We'll go ahead and save it here, and that'll be it. Thank you for sticking with us and learning how to build a wireframe and the pros and cons of why you should and should not use a wireframes. Please remember that if you are a beginner, then wireframes are always a good idea. It's always good to have a starting point, and wireframes will do just that for you. If you are a seasoned veteran, then it's most likely that you already have the theories in mind, and you already have all of the technical aspects in mind, so that you're able to just concentrate on letting the creative juices flow. So stay tuned for part 2, where we will begin designing the Photoshop part of our website. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.